All right. Good afternoon, students. As promised, I am doing this video with emphasis on angles. We will look through the basic information related to angles, after which I'll demonstrate how to draw angles using your protractor. All right, so let's get straight into that. Now, basically, an angle is something that is not new to you, right? You would have done this before. So this is just like some refresher to you, all right? So an angle is said to be formed when two straight lines meet at a point. All right, so that is pretty much straightforward. So whenever you have two straight lines meeting at a point, you have an angle, right? So one straight line, and then you have another straight line drawn to that. Right, you have another straight line drawn to that. Now, what is not explained is that as much as two straight lines are meeting at a point, you wouldn't have just one angle, right? As a matter of fact, you have two angles being formed there, right? For example, when these two meet at a point, you have two angles being formed, right? One is on the inside and another one is on the outside. So we can have a reflex angle as well as an acute angle being formed when those two straight lines meet at a point. All right, so what we normally do, we use an arc to indicate where the angle is, whether it's on the inside or the outside, right? Whichever one we are placing emphasis on. So that is just to give you brief information in relation to what an angle is. All right, and we know that angles, they're measured in degrees. So that's the unit for angles. Good. Now moving on to the parts of an angle. Here we have an acute angle, and we have the various parts. Now the exact point where the two lines meet, that is called the vertex, right? That is known as the vertex. The two actual lines that makes up the angle, we call them the arms of the angle, right? We call them the arms. And of course, the space indicated in between here, that's the actual angle, right? This line is going up at an angle of how much ever degrees, right? So that's the definition of an angle, and these are the parts of an angle. Moving on, we want to look at the various types of angles now. And again, this is not something that is new to you, right? You have knowledge, most of you should have knowledge of the different types of angles, right? So here we have acute angle, and it says that an acute angle, these angles, they're less than 90 degrees. So any angle that is less than 90 degrees is considered as an acute angle. Right angle is equal to 90 degrees. So this is exactly 90 degrees. Nothing more, nothing more, nothing less. Obtuse angle now, these angles, they are greater than 90 degrees. So they are more than 90 degrees, but less than 180 degrees. So any amount falling between 90 and 180, we call them obtuse angle. Straight angle equal to 180. So this is basically a straight line, right? It has an angle of 180 degrees. Reflex angle is greater than 180, but less than 360. So anything between 180 and 360, we consider that as a reflex angle, right? Now, you might be told that there is one name of full angle, which is 360 degrees. But in technical jargon, we call that a circle, right? A circle has 360 degrees. So we don't list that as a type of angle. Now, there are two others associated with the types. This will be complementary angle and supplementary angle. And what I want you to do is do some research, find out what is complementary and what is supplementary angle. And in addition to that, you would draw examples of what these angles look like. All right, so that is your task. Moving on, we have the examples here of these angles, acute angle, and if you notice the space is small, right? It is less than 90 degrees. And also, I want to highlight this, that this angle starts on here, which is 0 degrees, and it increases in that direction. All right, it increases in that direction. Similarly, the right angle, it gets a little bigger in this case, right? It goes all the way to a vertical line where the line goes straight up. Obtuse angle increases and it gets wider, all right? The space gets more than that of a right angle. Straight angle, it gets more than that of an obtuse angle. So this goes all the way back to 0 degrees or 180 degrees. All right. And the reflex angle now that gets so big that it overlaps. Right? It overlaps and you have this angle here, right? It is greater than 90, but less than, greater than 180, sorry, but less than 360. Good. So these are examples of the types of angles. And of course, you need to put this information in your exercise book, right? Ensure you write these information in your books. Good. Now, with that being said, of course, just to remind you again, you need to ensure that you remember this information. So when test comes, you will get a chance or you will remember these concepts. All right. Moving on, we're going to look now at how you draw angles using the protractor. Right? And for you who may not be aware, the protractor is this semicircular instrument in your geometry set. Right? And if you notice, they have different measurements or different markings, right? In different directions. So let's look at the one on the inside where 0 starts on the right-hand side and it increases as you go to the left. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on, all the way to 180, right? It increases as you go to the left. There is a reason for that, and we'll get into that just now. The one on the left-hand side now, you would see 0 here on the left-hand side, and it increases as you go to the right. So this is in the opposite direction. So 0, 10, 20, 30, and so on, it increases in the opposite direction. So you have one of them increasing as you go to the right. That's the one on the outside. And then you have one on the inside increasing as you go to the left. Right? So we have some differences in terms of direction that these numbers are increasing towards. Right? And as I said, there is a reason for that. So we'll go straight into how we actually obtain angles using this protractor. Good. So the first one we want to get is 77 degrees. Now, the first thing we would need to do is draw a line. All right, so you take your ruler and you draw a line. All right, you take your ruler and you draw a line. Just excuse the noise in the background. Right, I don't know what's going on. So the first thing you do is draw the line. And yes, we need to label the lines also. And we label B. Right, so one end is A and the other end is B. Now, before we continue with that, I want to make this part clear, is that angles, we can draw them from A or the left end of the line, or we can draw them from B, which is the right end of the line. Now, please note that in this case, for the first one, 0 would start from here. So you increase as you go in that direction. For this one, 0 would start from here and you increase as you go in that direction. So that is why we have these measurements on this protractor in that way. So if we are drawing angles from A, right, it says that the 0 is on the right-hand side, which is the inner measurements. So we have to use the inner measurements when we draw in angles from A. Now, another important point to note is that you must place the protractor at A, the center of the protractor at A. Now, the center of the protractor is this part where the 90-degree line comes down and meets the 180-degree line, which is the baseline. So where this line and this line meet up, that is the center of the protractor, right? So you place your protractor, or that part of the protractor, where you are drawing the angle from. So if it's A, you place that point at A. If it's B, you would place that point at B, right? I hope you get that clear. So we're working from A. Now remember, looking at the illustration that I have here, when you're drawing from A, right, you have to use the inner measurement, which increases as you go to the left. So what you would need to do first is identify 70 on the inside. So 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. You find 70, which is this continuous line here. This is 70 degrees. All right, so you find 70 and you count 7 of the small ones. So 70, and please note you are increasing as you go to the left. So you got to count to go to the left. So 70, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is the center. The longer line, this is 5, 6, 7. So you mark 70. Right now, when you mark that little point there, then you take your ruler and you draw a line from A to that point. Right, from A to that point. So you just adjust your ruler from A to that point. And that is how you obtain 70 degrees from A. All right, 70 degrees from A. Now what you would need to do is indicate where the angle is located. So you use the pair of compasses and you simply put a little arc on the inside. So we to say that the angle is on the inside. Because you remember, as soon as two lines meet at the point, two angles are actually formed, one on the inside, one on the outside. Good. Moving on. Now, if we want to draw the angle from B, right? We want to draw the angle from B. So what we do, we use the protractor again. Let me just shift this down a little bit more to the left. So we use the protractor and we place it at B. Again, you remember we place the center of the protractor at B. Then we identify 70. Now remember, this illustration that I have on the right here, that tells you that when you're drawing the angle from B, it means that the other end of the line is 0 and it increases as you go to the right. Just now, we increased when you go to the left. Now it's the opposite. So you start from 0 on the left-hand side and you increase as you go to the right. So you look at 70, right? You find 70 on the outside and you count 7. This time you count in to go to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is the longer one, 6, 7. Right? So we mark 77. So from B, you draw a line to that point. And that is how you get 77 from B. All right. Now, please note, I'll do another demonstration of this because you need to know which measurements to use, whether it's the one on the outside or the one on the inside. Now, say, for example, I want to draw an angle from that point, right? I mark the point. I place the protractor at that point. All right. Now, I'm going to use a line to show you the difference. Now, if I want to draw an angle like this first one here, which is illustrated here, then I would need to use 77, which is on this side of the line of the protractor, right? The inner side of the protractor. So you find 70 and you count 7, and that would give you this line here. That is 77. Now, on the other hand, if I want to draw it like this, that is circled here, if I want to draw it like this one here, then I would place, or I would draw the line, sorry. I would draw the line from here, and I find 70 on the outside, which is here, and I count 7. So you see the difference here, 70 degrees from that side, and 70 degrees, 77 from this side. They're like almost the opposite of each other. Right, so there we have the two angles. They are from the same point, but they're facing different direction. This is 70 degrees, and that is 70 degrees. So I want you to understand the difference, right? Using these measurements here. Now, I'll give you a final scenario before I move on to another one. Now, we know that 70 degrees is an acute angle. It's less than 90, right? So it is an acute angle. Just a minute. So 70 degrees, 77 degrees is an acute angle, right? We know that. So what happens if we draw in the angle from A and we use 77 on the wrong side? Right, so if I mark 77 here and I come and I draw my line from there to this point here, right? Does this look like an acute angle? It's not, right? This is not an acute angle, it's an obtuse angle. So we know that 77, this cannot be 77. So we know that we use the wrong one. So what you have to go and do is go back, erase or start a new drawing and find 77 on the other side. And that will give you your acute angle. Right, that would give you your acute angle. Let me just draw it so you can see what it looks like. So from this point, you draw here. And that will give you your acute angle. Right, so as soon as you finish your drawing, it can tell you whether you are correct or not, just by looking at it. Right, so pay attention to that. Now 133 degrees, I'll show you how to get that. And that is an obtuse angle. I do hope you realize that I am demonstrating an obtuse, an acute, and a reflex. So for this obtuse angle, you set the protractor again where it's supposed to be. All right, and remember, once we draw in from A, we're going in this direction. Right? So we look for 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, and we're looking for 133. So you find 130, which is here. So 130 is here, and then you count 1, 2, 3, and that will give you 133. Right? So you mark that 133, you draw a line from A to that 133. And that would be your angle. And again, if I'm to use the incorrect side, say for example, I use 130 and I count 3 on this side, right? When I draw the line, this is what the angle would look like, right? And we know that 133 is an obtuse angle. So this here is not an obtuse angle. So once you see you do that, know that it is wrong and you have to correct that. Right, so this here is what we are looking for with the angle on the inside. Now, what happens when we draw an angle from B in this case? Right, again, we place the protractor at B. Right, we place the protractor at B and we find 133. But before we can find 133, we need to find 130. And we are starting from 0 on the left-hand side, and we're going in this direction. So we find 130, and then we count 1, 2, 3. And that would give us an angle of 133 degrees. All right, so that is what it would look like again. And please note, if you use the incorrect one, if you use 133 on the inside, that would give you an acute angle. 133 would be somewhere about here. Right, so be careful, ensure you know which measurements you have to use. All right, now the last one I'll demonstrate quickly. 243. Now this is a reflex angle, rather. All right, this is a reflex angle. So you will now place your protractor at A. Let's say we want to draw it from A first. But you might be wondering now, if this has a maximum of 180, how am I finding 243? All right, now it's possible I can, with my protractor, I can turn it into an entire circle, but your protractor is a semicircle. So what we need to do is find out the difference, because this is the maximum, which is 180, a straight line. How much more do I need to get to 43? So you do a little subtraction there. 2, 4, 3 minus 180, and that should give you 63. So you know that you need 63 more. All right, so what you do in this case, you upturn your protractor and or in other words, you turn it upside down. And you ensure that you set it properly, ensure that the baseline is on top of your line. All right, and then you find this 63. So using the inner measurement, 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on, you find 63. So this is 60, and you count 3. 1, 2, 3. 63. All right, and with that, you draw your line to that point. All right, and that would now give you your angle of 243 degrees. Now, please note this arc that I put here, that should be drawn using your pair of compasses. So let me just do it the right way, because I want persons to do it the correct way and the neat and accurate manner. Right? So you draw that there. And that is what your 243 degrees would look like. Right? Now, from D, if you want to draw it from D, let me just get rid of these. If you want to draw it from D, then you place the protractor D upside down and you find 60. But in this case, we're not 63, sorry. We're not finding 63 on the inside. We have to use the outside. So 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and you count 3. 1, 2, 3. And you've marked the 63. So 180 plus that 63 will give you 240. And you simply draw your line. And of course, you need to come now and indicate where the angle actually is, which is here. Right, so you mark that there. Good. So that is how you actually obtain these angles using a protractor. Right, that's how you obtain the angles using a protractor. Now that leads me to your homework and your assignment that you are given under this. So they're here. Again, I give you one acute for the homework, one obtuse, and one reflex. Same thing for the assignment, right? So you would need to do these